And welcome back to the Hungarian Grand Prix review. This is the Hot Lap. We are talking about what was a very chaotic McLaren 1-2. Awesome McLaren 1-2. But then when you get into it, if you watch the race, you'd be like, well, neither McLaren driver, I think, are going to be ecstatic. What a sad way as well for Oscar Piastri to win his first race with all that kerfuffle, all the arguments on the radio. It was the McLaren F1 Team Orders podcast seemingly airing all their dirty laundry on there. Max Verstappen back to his pre-2022, so 2021 and below antics, getting a bit silly on the radio, a bit stubborn, and then, hey Lewis, I'm coming through no matter what. But he does escape a penalty, which is good for Max Verstappen. They deemed it a racing incident, which fair enough. But let's get into the race show. It was an absolutely just craziness. And here you go here. I don't know if it's big enough. I found this on Facebook. History repeats itself. If you remember, you've got the Italian Grand Prix 2021. Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen end up having a clash with Max airborne on Lewis's head. Hungary 2024. A McLaren 1-2 again. But just like Italy. But then Max Verstappen ends up airborne. Not quite, but not quite on Lewis Hamilton's head. From some photos, it almost looks like he could have been on Lewis Hamilton's head. But let's get into the results of the Hungarian Grand Prix, shall we? So well done to Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris finishing 2.1 seconds behind. Lewis Hamilton 14.8. Yes, with his big battle with Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc 19.6 seconds behind in fourth. Max Verstappen, a very disappointed, deservedly so, I think, because he was a bit silly. 21.3. Sainz 23 seconds behind in sixth. Perez, not too bad for Perez. Bear in mind he started 18th. He did beat Russell. Although Russell, I think, on a superior strategy Perez had compared to Russell, because I think Mercedes conceded that at some point Perez was going to get past him because he did have the slightly better strategy. He did have the slightly better tyre offset, unlike Max Verstappen, who did not arguably have a superior strategy. We'll get into that in a second. And then Yuki Tsunoda in 9th, Stroll 10th, Lando Norris 11th, 12th Ricciardo a lap down, 13th Hulkenberg, Albon disappointing 14th and 15th Magnussen, 16th Bottas, 17th Sargent, 18th Ocon, Zhou 19th, and the only guy that did not finish was Pierre Gasly. Here are the driver standings at the moment. 265 points has Max Verstappen. 189 has Lando Norris. Could have been a few points more had things been a bit different. Leclerc in third and 162. Sainz in fourth and 154. Piastri hunting down both Sainz and Leclerc are now 149 after that win. Hamilton at 125. He's finally got past Max Verstappen and he's got past Sergio Perez, who is on 124. Russell 116 in 8th. Alonso in 9th and 45, and Stroll in 10th on 24. That's pretty much our top. This is the Hungarian Grand Prix. I don't think you can see it. So the issue between obviously Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, the Turn 1 incident between cars 1 and 44 was deemed basically a no further action. We'll get into that more in another video. Now let's quickly though have a look at the Constructors' Championship before we get into all the team double by team. So Red Bull are leading on 389, but McLaren with that 1-2 and the whoops-a-daisy from Max Verstappen, they have really closed up. They're on 338. They've now surpassed the Scarlet team, Ferrari. Mercedes in 4th and 241. Then you've got to go all the way down to Aston Martin in 5th on 69. RB on 33 and 6th. Haas on 27. Not too bad by well, not this weekend, but it's going to be close, I think, between those two for the rest of the year. Alpine in 8th or 9th. I think they're just relieved to keep, to be 8th. Williams 9th. And once again, sadly, Kick Sauber scoring 0 points, which is kind of a shame, isn't it? So here we are, ladies and gents, for our Hungarian Grand Prix winners and losers. So let's then get into our first winner or loser. Let's start with last, shall we? Let's start with last. And the man who did finish last, kind of a shame really. This man here, Pierre of the Gasly. Yeah, I was disappointed. Nothing he could have done. He just had a car problem. They told him to come in. It was quite early on during the race. Oh well. Next up, the first official finisher was Zhou. Disappointing as well, but then again, he got outclassed by Bottas, didn't he? With Bottas finishing 16th, him 19th. Not amazingly outclassed, but yeah, okay. Nice from Zhao. So Esteban Ocon is next. The man that started at the back along with his teammate Pierre Gasly. And I thought maybe they could possibly do a bit more. They didn't. Ergo, he is 19th. The man finishing 18th, though, is this guy here. He had a good qualified within a couple of tenths of Alex Albon. So I think a really positive weekend to take away. He beat Ocon and Zhao. So finishing 17th, one lap down. Albon finishing 14th. So I don't really think it's too bad to look for Logan Sargent. But it is a better performance. I still think, though, it is too little too late for Logan Sargent. So next up, we have Valtteri Bottas, who, once again, I think a very average kind of race. Yeah, it's going to be, it's getting tough now to see if there's any way that Kick Sauber are going to score a point. They get so close. I'm surely in the second half of the season, we're going to have one of those funny races where loads of people are out of position and they score a point. I'd like to think so, but it's getting a bit harder to have the faith that they are indeed going to score. Now, 15th, the man that's currently just found out he's unemployed for next year is this guy here, Kenin Magnussen, because I haven't fixed that yet. Yeah, kind of like about where you expected him to be. Moving on. So in 14th, I can't help but feel, I mean, Alexander Albon, he's finished 14th, and I can't help but feel that I wanted more from the Williams, but then again, this might not be, I mean, when we talked about Williams tracks, it was normally the downforce ones, but then James Vowles has come out and said, look, we're going to struggle this year. He's been quite open about that, so fair enough there for Alex Albon in 14th. 13th, Nico Hülkenberg, I think. Well, he said before the race it was going to be quite difficult to score points. I go, yes, that's been proven true in Hungary. Even when you look at what happened between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, it proved quite difficult to pass. So Ricciardo in 12th. I can't help but feel that, bearing in mind he out-qualified Tsunoda, that's kind of a bit of a fail for Daniel Ricciardo. And he got beaten by Perez. Yes, Perez is in the better car by far. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo in 12th. I think you'll be a bit disappointed. Also, I think quite disappointing, bearing in mind they qualified quite well. Alonso beaten by Stroll in 11th. Once again, it's like Samson when having his haircut. When he loses all his strength. Ever since Fernando Alonso signed, he's become average. It's like he's lost his superpowers. His teammate beating, well done Lance Stroll, getting a point for the team. Solid. There clearly, though, is something wrong with the car, I think. Yeah, because they got beaten by this guy here, who I think Aston Martin have a better car. It must have been the strategy, but well done, Tsunoda, for getting 9th. More points in RB, or in that fight with Alpine. Who knows, maybe would they even be able to catch Aston Martin? Probably not. They're 33 points. And Aston Martin are on 69. So I doubt they can catch Aston Martin by the end of the year. But let's be honest, stranger things have indeed happened. And George Russell, yeah, it wasn't all his fault, the reason why he qualified so far back. But I wanted to say, well done, Mr. Russell, for getting all the way up to 8th. You were ahead of Perez, then not McLaren, obviously. No, Mercedes pitted you, and then at that point, you did some fast laps to end up finishing only a few seconds behind Sergio Perez. I don't really think you would have caught him, but until that, he was ahead of Perez. Now, the reason why I think Mercedes pitted him is because they realised Perez was coming up so fast that Perez was probably going to pass Russell. Having said that, in hindsight, bear in mind had the difficulty that Verstappen, in arguably a better car because it had more go faster bits on it, he couldn't get past Hamilton. So I wonder whether it was worth leading them out. So Sergio Perez then finishing in 7th. I think that's about as good as you could have done. Well done, Sergio Perez. You have had quite a solid race there. I don't, bear in mind he started right near the back. Could you have imagined more for him? Probably not. Is it too little too late to save his career? Probably. But a big result on Belgium, may well say that as well. So looking forward to what this man can do in Belgium. That should give him a bit of confidence as well. In 6th, we have the slowest of the 2 Ferraris. No, it's not Leclerc like qualifying. It's Carlos Sainz. Yeah, I think I can't help but feel the Ferraris were potentially on par with the Mercedes. I mean, in qualifying, I can't help but feel that Ferrari looked more... It was really close between them and Mercedes, let's say that. I'm going to sit on the fence and get splinters. And it was this man here in 5th. So let's talk about Max Verstappen swearing on the radio, intimated that they're not going to get... He wasn't really called childish like some websites have said. I think talking about the Hamilton and Verstappen incident when they ended up touching each other and sending Max into the air, I think that's when... he said, we're not going to argue about it. It's a bit childish. Now, Max Verstappen, yes, his car was out of control when Hamilton turned in, but we're gonna do a whole nother video about that. But the issue is, once the pressure was on, again, Max Verstappen is like, oh my gosh, what's going on? He, quite rightly, I think, Red Bull gave him a really bad strategy, didn't they? It was not good at all. Letting both Hamilton and Leclerc undercut him. I think the thinking was from Red Bull that, okay, fair enough, then Hamilton came in before them. He probably would have got the undercut because he was within a second and a half. So I think they've realised once that may have not been worth it, we may as well go the full hog and have a massive tyre offset, which he did, but then he couldn't get past Hamilton, sadly. Did get past Leclerc though towards the end. The second time he tried to get past Hamilton, it didn't work, did it? Towards the end of the race, Hamilton, I think some of his defence was right on the line, from Hamilton, but that's nothing that Verstappen hasn't done. But it was on the line. I think anything further could have been an issue. And then Max completely locked his brakes up, and then that was just anger maybe. He was in the DRS zone. He did brake a bit too late. I can't help but feel that Max is a lot, and Hamilton as well to a certain extent, but not as much, as Max is really ruled by his emotions in racing, which can make you absolutely super fast, but it can all fall apart a bit as well. That's something also I felt like Sebastian Vettel at Red Bull, when things weren't going his way, he was really good when it was. It all started to fall apart sometimes with him shouting on the radio, but not to the extent that Max is swearing and shouting. Now, I don't, in the heat of the moment, completely I get it, it's a sport, but some of the stuff he said, like I think later he intimated that everyone, criticising him can go do one, but obviously using the F word, which I think you're a world champion, you represent Red Bull. It's great that they let you vent to a certain extent, but no, you don't do that. I think that's just, you can say something. You can say something equally against your haters, but not that. That's just a bit silly, really, isn't it, Max? No, I think you're better than that. We all know you're better than that, Max. So in 4th place was Charles Leclerc. Well done for Charles. You beat Carlos Sainz. I think that was the absolute minimum you needed to do, because people were once again beginning to say, well, have they got rid of the wrong guy? I don't think they have, but he needs to prove it, I think, still every weekend that they haven't, because everyone was talking about Carlos Sainz at the beginning of the year. He needs to stop that, I think, for his own confidence, for when Hamilton comes into the car. And speaking of the 7-time world champion, the British Grand Prix winner as well, another podium, his 200th podium as well. So well done, Lewis Hamilton. Really good defence against Max Verstappen. I think both Hamilton and Verstappen were lucky that their cars were not damaged or completely ruined. I mean, that was some hit for Matt to be launching Max like one of Elon Musk's rockets, it looked like at some point. So well done. Now let's get into Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, shall we? Yeah. So Lando Norris at some point, Hamilton towards the second stops, Hamilton is about 6 seconds behind, so really outside the window. Hamilton pits. They decide to pit Lando Norris next, which then gives him the undercut, which is really powerful for Hungary. So when Oscar Piastri pits the next way round, Lando Norris comes out ahead. What we have to also remember is at the start, Lando Norris fluffed the start. He was quite aggressive with Oscar Piastri, but then Oscar Piastri was equally aggressive, braking quite late, but perfectly within the rules. It did make Verstappen go wide at the start of the race, who then booted it, keeping second place and told to let Lando through at one point. hard racing at the corner. Yeah, well done. I mean, had Lando got a decent start, wouldn't have happened, would it? So once again, kind of like Spain, Lando, to a certain extent, was the master of his own demise. Should Lando have let Oscar Piastri through? That's the thing. If Lando finishes less than 7 points behind in the World Championship at the max, it would have been a massive mistake. If he doesn't, it may have not been. But for both Lando and Piastri, who won his first race, I think the biggest, I don't want to say villain, but the biggest problem here is not Oscar Piastri, it's not Lando Norris, it is the McLaren team. They did not need to pit Lando first. They knew that was going to potentially cause a hoo-ha. We are not privy to all the radio talk, but assuming they put the interesting stuff out there, the stuff of note out there, I trust the broadcasters enough to guess that there was no talk of Lando saying, okay, we're pitting you first, you are going to be ahead of Oscar, but then can you let Oscar through? Because we don't want Hamilton to beat you, to get ahead of you, which is why we're pitting you first, even though Hamilton at that point was 6 seconds behind. Why would you? You don't need to. I don't think. And then he gets ahead of Oscar, and then he's like, no, if you wanted Oscar to win, you should have pitted him first. Absolutely fair point. And then McLaren began the McLaren Team Orders podcast for like the second third of the race, and it just looked really, really unprofessional. And I think the people that lose out the most is McLaren. And then in secondary, Oscar Piastri winning his first race. Not a nice way to win your first race. It reminds me very much of Jerez 1998, when everyone moved out of the way for Mika Häkkinen to win his first race. It was rubbish. It didn't feel like a race win for everyone. Everyone was scratching their head. It was kind of like shirked a tiny bit because of the fact of the Jerez 97 incident between Michael Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve, which we have done a video on if you want to see. But also, if you remember Australia 1998, the very next race, McLaren were won by almost a lap. Mika Häkkinen mistakenly went into the pits after leading, came out behind Coulthard, obviously, because he didn't need a pit stop. It was like he gave himself a drive-through penalty. And then there had been an agreement, whoever's first to the first corner is going to win the race. Fair enough. But it was Häkkinen's mistake, and then Coulthard let him through, as per that agreement. But once again, it was Häkkinen's mistake. This one, Lando did arguably do the right thing for the team. Didn't do the right thing for him. But when you heard them do it for the team, Lando, you might need Oscar Piastri at some point to help win a championship. Well, yeah, I need Oscar Piastri now to win a championship. He could argue, so let me win, because Max Verstappen's not doing a great job. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't in that situation. And the biggest finger, the eye of Sauron, so to speak, has to be cast on the McLaren, on the McLaren, on the strategy, the people that are managing the race, the McLaren pit wall. Shocking, absolutely shocking, abhorrent, and kind of embarrassing, really, if I'm honest. So that's kind of like our winners and losers. I am going to do it. We are going to do a race fallout, and we are going to do a separate chat about obviously that incident with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, maybe even one Lando Norris, who knows. But if you made it to the end, please give us a subscribe, give us a like, that'll be absolutely brilliant. If you want to see more, do the same. Hit that notification button as well, so you won't miss a video. We talk Formula 1, rally, we do a bit of gaming, we talk touring cars, which is coming next week, I believe. After their summer break, and it's going to be Belgium next week, so we'll have our Belgium preview at some point during the week. Also, we will have our rally fallout of the latest rally in Latvia, see how Martin Seix did, and there we go. Okay, deep breath, speak to you soon.